Hey everybody, this is Mucha Marapa of Matrix Global Media, and welcome to Ask the Experts, where I call on many of the internet's leading experts and authoritative minds and ask them what they're doing, lessons they've learned, and things they can teach us for the good of our own products, services, and programs. Now, lead generation is, in my opinion, one of the most important, yet one of the most underutilized aspects of a business. Plain and simple, if you don't have a steady flow of leads, you will not only struggle to maximize your business potential, you may also struggle to stay in business. And it's not just having leads, but the right kind of leads that make a difference. And with that in mind, I'm absolutely delighted to have the online lead generation rock star, Charlie Hutton, here. Charlie, thanks ever so much for joining me.
Hey, Mitch, no worries. How are we doing today?
I'm very well. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Charlie, because, you know, I work with a lot of local businesses. I'm on a bit of a crusade here, and, you know, I walk into sandwich shops and hairdressers and, you know, business mailing shops, and I just see them not doing the basic stuff like leads generation. So I was really excited when you agreed to be on this call. So thanks again, Charlie.
Hey, no problem at all. Thank you for having me.
So I like to start this as a bit of a direct testimony to the great Joe Polish and Dean Jackson's I Love Marketing podcast, and I say, who is Charlie Hutton when it comes to generating leads online, and why should people listen to you?
Well, I guess, my online experience sort of, going back to like 12, 15 years, I guess, really much is where I started on this sort of side of things. But since then it's grown, and I've gone from sort of like, I guess what you class as general web design to really sort of like focusing on the online lead generation, which we're going to talk about today. And sort of like, done consulting with sort of like big corporate clients, international clients, small, medium-sized businesses like you were talking about there as well, and even the odd celebrity here and there on the back of it. Currently doing a project with the 80s legend that is Pat Sharp, which has been quite an interesting one as well. So all different stuff which throws into the mix when putting these ideas and thoughts together for clients and customers.
Now, when we look at certain areas, as you well know, Charlie, I mean, we can all be accomplished in a number of places, but sometimes we just have to go ahead and we need to claim a topic. Why lead generation? How did you get started? Was this directly from what you were doing with websites and then realizing that even though you were creating lovely websites for people, they weren't necessarily working for them? How did your online lead generation story start?
Yeah, it was sort of along those lines, pretty much. I mean, the online lead generation rockstar title, that was sort of like a throwaway comment that came from a client one day.
Well, it beats Ninja, mate, let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, our friends across the fire, Ninja this and Ninja that. So when I saw Rockstar, I went, well, hey, you know?
Well, it's sort of different, and it sort of stuck. So I thought, that's good enough. I can live with that. But no, you're right. My business started off originally in sort of like your typical web design, which a lot of people are out there doing. I've sort of like background to a certain extent comes in from a lot of direct response marketing. But I was in a client meeting. We were talking about sort of like websites and bits and pieces and looking at doing stuff and pushing some clients' sites forward. And he was showing me a system that he'd started trialing, and he just testing out sort of like Google AdWords and pay-per-click with some really simple landing pages. And sort of like a duct tape together email autoresponder, and he was showing me sort of like the activity and the different things that he was driving, sort of like business wise on the back of this, and I was like, this is the way to do it. This is unbelievable. And it just sort of went from there really, and started testing and tweaking what he'd done already and putting sort of like a direct response focus spin on sort of like the copy on the landing pages and a bit of design elements to it as well. And that's where it sort of like trailed to, went to, and it was like, wow, this is working really well. And that was it really much. It was just sort of like narrowing that niche and applying different things from sort of like a typical offline marketing to online in this sort of landing page and as I said, response-focused approach to the internet, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, in my intro, I actually sort of said, because it's just something, you know, back in the day when I first started out my own marketing journey, I was very much in the travel and tourism arena, and I was just baffled by how many organizations failed to capture information. And, somebody who we study an awful lot of, Dan Kennedy, often says that, he could go to any organization and see a system in place to run that organization. So you'll go to a hotel and you'll actually see, you'll be able to charge things to your room, and then you go to the spa and you can charge things and all the rest of it. But when it actually just comes to generating and capturing leads, people don't have systems in place. So, that baffles me. But in your opinion, why should we take the process of generating leads as seriously as you and I believe we should?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, really, Mitch. I think it's like yourself, and you walk into businesses and you start talking to people and asking them sort of like what the pipeline's like, or what business they've got coming up, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know. We had a call last week, but I've got it down in the diary to sort of follow them up and that sort of thing." And there's just no real sort of process or as you say, system in place to make sure that leads are being correctly nurtured. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, when people sort of like call up or they make inquiries at sort of like the initial sort of like contact stage, that people aren't always necessarily sort of like ready to buy. So having some sort of lead process in place to make sure that you've got a constant and consistent supply of people coming in the pipeline, whether you're using sort of like online or offline methods to do that, it just means that it doesn't really matter what's sort of like what are the words I'm looking for? It doesn't really matter how the market's going, as long as you've got a consistent supply of people coming in at the top end. If you're processing your sales funnels all mapped out as people go through it, then, as I said, as long as there's enough people coming in at the top, you can normally make sure that you've got the right amount of business coming out at the back end, which is what people are really interested in.
Mm-hmm. There was one sandwich shop in particular. I just put some web pages together for him, and I'll never forget this. It was just before the end of the year, and I said to him, how many people on average do you have coming into your shop every day? And he said 150. 150. Wow. And I said, well, look, put a champagne bucket up or something. Just get scraps of paper and ask for people to put their names in. Let's start really primitive to start with. But you must start capturing the names of people who you don't have to convince. A, where you're located, B, the quality of your sandwiches and your soups and things like that, and C, about, different times of the year, if they want a cake baked for them or something else like that, you could do that. And it just blew me away. 150 a day,
That's brilliant. And as you said, it's a fantastic marketing opportunity. They've only got to have sort of like a quiet afternoon, and they've got a big email list or marketing list. They can quickly punch a message out saying, well, we got a load of excess sandwiches here. We need to get rid of them. And where they normally get thrown in the bin, even if they sell them for half price, it means that they can actually they can start making sure that they're busy all the time and really start utilising sort of like quiet periods.
And be proactive in the process
exactly.
as well, isn't it? Yeah. So, Charlie, I like to sort of go 3 and 3 here, and sometimes they are a bit intertwined. But, when we start talking about lead generation mistakes that you see, businesses and people making, if we were to list sort of 3 of them, and one could well be, well, they don't do lead generation or whatever. But what 3 would you sort of highlight as the most common that you see happening time after time?
I think probably the biggest for me is what you've already highlighted, Image, and that's actually not actually collecting details, whether it's sort of like in a shop or sort of like on a website, and sort of like at minimum trying to collect sort of like a name and an email address really from everyone that you come in contact with. I think that's probably the biggest one, and it amazes me every time that they talk to someone and they're not doing that. On sort of like, I guess, the back of that, I think as far as websites and online sort of marketing goes, the biggest. Well, the next biggest thing is probably really people not really articulating what they actually do to people that are reading their information about them. It might be sort of like really boring's not the right word, but uninspiring copy, or it might be purely about the business and a big list of services. And there's so many other people out there competing. You've really got to sort of like make sure you stand out and start talking to the prospect or the client in what's typically called sort of like what's in it for me language. Mm-hmm. How are you going to help that customer, and how are you going to help solve their problems? And if you can start sort of like engaging with them that way and having that sort of conversation, it's sort of like the best way of doing it. But so many people tend to focus on, right, I've got this big list of services, I've been trading for the past 15 years, we can do accounts, we can do bookkeeping, we can do end-of-year tax returns, and it just throws a load of information out there, and the customer and the prospect just ends up getting lost in the whole mix.
I love that. Drayton Bird, the legendary direct marketer and copywriter, he pretty much says, listen, don't talk about yourself. No one's in the faintest bit interested.
It's very true.
And I've made it a little less blue than he normally sort of will describe that. But, you know, and that again was a real big one for me because, you know, it's that whole, hey, well, I've done this and I've helped this and I've helped that. And he says, look, people aren't interested in that. Don't talk about yourself, you know.
No, that's it. People want help with the problems that they've got, and if you can convey how you can help them, 9 times out of 10 they'll be interested if you can get that sort of like know, like, and trust behind what you're trying to say as well.
And the third one, is there a third?
Third one, I think probably ties into that one quite nicely, and that's probably sort of we see it a lot, especially if people are doing online advertising, sort of like flyers or leaflet drops and different things as well. Especially if they're focusing them back to a website or some sort of online media, they normally always point people to sort of like straight back to the homepage, to the front page of the website, and 9 times out of 10, that front page is sort of like an entry-level page, and it doesn't have anything to do with the offer or promotion that you might be screaming about on your leaflets or flyers. The end result being just that the customer gets confused. They might have a flyer through the door. I don't know. If you use like a lawn care or a landscaping example, sort of like 50% off all lawn care or 50% off getting your grass cut this summer. They land on sort of like a general page, which is all about gardening, flowers, bits and pieces. Nothing to do with the lawn care, and before you know it, you've lost them. Just because that message to market match isn't clear enough.
A couple of years back, and it was wild, and it's just to underline what you were saying. There was a pay-per-click campaign, you know, and I think it was in line with Valentine's Day, and someone said, you know, beautiful red dresses, you know, get your lady to wear red, or look, you know, be the woman in red, and blah blah blah, and clicked on. And it was for a high street store that also sells kitchen appliances. And the click went through to the homepage, and on there were pots and pans and kettles and brooms and things. And I just thought, my goodness, this is just... Because there's something subconscious that happens as well, doesn't there? When you see the advert itself showing a red dress, and then you click on and you go to a homepage and you see something in there, it's almost like that trust level that, hey, this person really understands what I'm looking for. It goes.
It does. It's as I said, you sort of like lose that specialist approach, and if people just haven't got the time to be browsing and looking to find stuff. I mean, it's just as quick as people to go then back to Google, type in a different search, and try and find someone else rather than to navigate your site to try and find the offer that they've just found. So you're just trying to make that journey as slick and as easy as possible for anyone that's coming through. Okay. Ultimately, so they can buy from you as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So folks, you've got that. If you want to sort of you want to be probably put yourself in the top sort of 1% of most marketers here. You've got to make sure that to start with you start collecting details. Next, really articulate what it is you do and the transformations, the results you can provide, the benefits, the promises that you, as opposed to just rambling on about all the other stuff. And then thirdly, if you are doing any sort of lead gen from the way of direct mail or pay-per-click advertising or something else like that, make sure that first page they go to is directly relative to the advert or the promise that you made in it. Is that right, Charlie?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Okay.
As said, and they all sort of tie together in their own little way.
Okay.
And as you said, I think if you start implementing those, you really are in sort of like the top 1% of people out there. It's incredible. As you said, even how many big businesses that you go and speak to that are making these simple mistakes.
Well, they're brand marketers as opposed to direct response, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, and that's a whole other conversation. You know. So, in the same breath, Charlie, I like to sort of get some implementable lead gen nuggets, you know, so literally stuff that people could you know, stop this recording or straight after it, just go ahead and begin to say, right, I'm going to do this and this, and they're better off for it. Would you look at the 3 we've just talked about, or do you have 3 additional nuggets that you could throw in for our listeners?
Yeah, I guess I'd build on the back of those 3.
Okay.
I think the first one that I'd say, there's a lot of email marketing systems out there, but if we're looking at sort of like quick fixes, down and dirty, let's get something done today. Everyone go and register for something sort of like a MailChimp account or an Aweber account, something where you can actually, a lot of them are free or sort of like a minimal monthly charge, but somewhere where you can actually start sending your visitors, or when you're sort of like going out collecting business cards, or if you've got a storefront collecting names and email addresses, that you can actually put those names and those email addresses in, and then sort of like bulk send or start messaging those people. Just it's sort of like a loose CRM system, but as I said, if you go and use MailChimp or Aweber or some system like that, they're super easy. You can have an account set up in 5 or 10 minutes, and it just makes it very, very quick to sort of like collate all your data in one place.
I agree with you totally, and I suppose part of it again is that whole psychological mindset shift they need to make. I've noticed you use a very robust system, which of course you've graduated up to, but to get somebody to start from absolutely nothing and then to something like MailChimp or Aweber that is simple, has a very low initial, and in most cases, a free 30 days so they can see how it works, that can get them started the right way without being overwhelmed, right?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And the great thing, as I said, with Aweber and stuff like MailChimp and a couple of the other ones out there, because they're so popular, there's so much sort of like free resources online, and YouTube's a fantastic resource for that as well. If you're having any trouble or you're not too sure how to do something, quick sort of like hit to YouTube, how do I create a new email template or whatever it might be, and within sort of 30 seconds you can be sat in front of a 10-minute video tutorial working your way through it. So you really don't have to spend any money, get any consultants in or anything like that. It's something you can set up yourself, and as I said, with a bit of quick research on YouTube, you can normally get an up and running in sort of like less than 10-15 minutes really.
Fantastic. So which other implementable nuggets do you have?
I think the next one, and again, I'd probably use it. I call it sort of like a lead magnet or a bribe, and it's a good old-fashioned sort of a free gift or free report or some sort of free information that you can talk around your expertise that you do in your business, and it could be as simple as sort of like a 10-step checklist or 10-step benefit guide to, I don't know, making the best sandwich or the best way to cut your grass. But something you can put together, you can advertise on your website or advertise via email or when you're going out to see people, and you can basically offer it, as I said, like a bribe or as a magnet to give to people in exchange for a name and an email address. So you can start actually going, I'm not just going to spam you with email in return for your email and sort of like the communication I'll send you. I really want to try and help you and want to educate you. With this sort of guide, and at the same time, by having that guide and that report in place, it can sort of position yourself as a bit of an expert in the market as well.
Correct.
And also, as I said, you're actually starting to help people, and I think the more that you can help people, the more that trust builds. And as I said, if you've got the trust there, you're laughing really.
I guess again, we take a few steps back, don't we? When we look about 5-6 years, maybe 10 years, this is where it used to say, sign up for our newsletter. And you just think, and I certainly thought, well, it's a little presumptuous, isn't it? That somebody would automatically assume that, what you've got to say, and just give them news from time to time is going to be of interest to them. When, you're in business, you've got something of value that you could sort of really give to somebody. I think it's so much more effective to, like what you said, have a lead magnet or a bribe, as opposed to just sign up for our newsletter, which had a time and place once upon a time, still probably does, but it doesn't have the same sort of impact.
No, that's it. And as you say, it's all about trying to help people. I think the more you can help people. I think it was Zig Ziglar used to say you can have everything in life that you want as long as you help as many people get in life what they want. And I think that's a good thing to go by. If you can help people and get them along the right sort of like guidelines to solving their problems, then 9 times out of 10 it's sort of like that'll be reciprocated and help you out as well.
Fantastic. So we had the sort of implementable nugget number 1 was sort of set up an autoresponder style sort of CRM system. Second was provide something of genuine value, in exchange for the email. And what's your third implementable nugget?
I guess the third one, which we're probably tying a bit back into the first one, is setting up sort of like your MailChimp or your email auto sort of responder account, and that would be sort of like put together 3 or 4 independent emails that you can send out to people and automate if you want to through MailChimp or one of the other autoresponders, so that as soon as you give someone the guide, you can click send on a button and they get sort of like sent 3 or 4 different emails over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, just elaborating perhaps a little bit further on the guide that they've just downloaded, perhaps providing a bit more back information, and just really using email to communicate and try and build that level of trust and build that relationship a little bit further.
Fantastic. So you're not going away really, just if anything, keep reinforcing the feel-good factor that you've started.
That's it, exactly. And when I say emails, what I don't mean is those big, ugly, branded, horrible
clickety-click
Yeah, sales emails, come and buy stuff from me. Type emails, talking sort of like plain text emails, something that looks like it's been written by a human being, spelling errors, everything like that in there, as though you've actually sat down and spent time to talk and try and communicate with this person. And as I said, you can do it manually if you want to. If you don't want to go and have the headache of setting it up with MailChimp, just note it down in the diary and say, right, on this day I'm going to just quickly use this pre-written email that I've got, send it off to this person. But you can start building that trust and building that relationship, and in a non-salesy type way.
No, that's fantastic. I really like that. So, Charlie, here we are. We're in January of 2013. We've got, the year ahead of us, and we've got the sort of the usual concerns that small businesses and larger businesses alike have. We've got our friends in the media, the media saying how desperately tough it's going to be, and we've got our folks and politicians pointing fingers at each other. Apart from that, we're all looking forward to a great year. Now, what are your predictions? And I know it's a real broad question, but from this whole lead gen concept, and I really like people to stand up there and say, hey, listen, unless people focus on ABC, it's going to be tough. And what are your predictions as far as grasping this lead generation concept? What do you want to see with their mindsets and how they evolve for this year?
I think it's going to be an interesting one, as you say, Mitch. I mean, first of all, I try and avoid all media and news as much as possible. Anything that's trying to poison my head, I try and keep out. But I think it's interesting. I mean, everything that we've gone through today in terms of sort of like, I guess you'd class it as giving away a free report and then some sort of sequence follow-up. I mean, it's all sort of old school direct response sort of like methods. It's been used back from the sort of like 20s and 30s with postage and bits and pieces. So in that sort of way, I guess not really that much has changed. It's just sort of like the delivery method that's been changed to making it sort of a bit more electronic.
Absolutely.
I think one thing that people are probably going to have to be aware of, and that's the curse that might be email. I mean, the great thing with it's sort of like free to send, but the flip side of that is that you're now perhaps competing with sort of like, whereas before 5 years ago, where every time everyone had an email, they were really, really excited and couldn't wait to open it. Whereas now you got sort of like 50, 60 different items in your inbox every single day. So you're constantly fighting with people to try and get your email opened or try and get your message opened. So I think perhaps as well as having the email follow up as part of that, but perhaps looking at other media as well, sort of like a mixed media follow up, whether it's sending out postcards or text messages, or sort of like a phone call as well. Just trying to make sure that when you're building leads and you're putting them through the process, that you're not just using one medium all the time. People are quickly switch off to getting emails all the time. It's I get an email from this guy all the time. But if you can throw in the occasional letter through the post, or sort of like even a quick phone call to touch base and answer any questions, it just makes sure that you're doing everything a bit different to everyone else, rather than just relying on one marketing medium all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good shout, Charlie. And just sort of taking it along those same lines you're speaking about, it's also that people have different ways of taking in the information, don't they?
That's right, exactly.
If it's me, and I've said this many times, if you want something to come my way, you either put something in my hand, or you give me something that I can listen to, an MP3 that I'll download. So when I'm walking, driving, running, or whatever, or cleaning the house, I will listen. That's how I study. And sometimes, if it's just an email, it might be the most valuable information in the world, but because it just doesn't fit into sort of what I'm doing, the likelihood is time after time I won't be downloading emails and sitting and reading them at my PC. So that whole thing about mixing it up a little bit, that's great advice.
No, it's true, and like you say with the audios, I'm a big one for audio CDs. Whenever I'm driving in the car, I've always got stuff on trying to learn. And like we said, we mentioned earlier about putting some sort of free guide or free report together. The great thing with these sort of things as well is once you've perhaps written that report or got it together, there's no reason you can't then sort of sit there and read through the report, or get a colleague to read through the report and create some sort of audio program off the back of that. It literally might be sort of like a 10-15 minute talk through exactly what you've written, but then again, it's something you can offer on a CD or something else, again, that's a different media that different people might respond and engage to, rather than it being sort of like a PDF which people have to read on screen. And I for one, I'm not a big fan of reading on screen. I'd rather have something in my hand. So you can sort of mix it up and deliver it in different ways.
Yeah, fantastic. So what we do and the way we do it, Charlie, often comes from a lot of study and the odd bit of blood, sweat and tears as well, So, with your own journey, and, I've yet to meet somebody sort of really with the ability to impact the lives and businesses of others who haven't sort of struggled somewhere along the line or wanted to do one or two things differently. So on your side, here we are talking to you, and you're establishing some really great stuff out there. But if you were to do it all over again, would there be some things that you would have done differently in your own journey, and if so, what are those things?
I think that probably the biggest thing for me would be actually reading a lot more.
As in studying?
As in studying.
Okay.
I used to be terrible for reading. Never used to like it. Used to bore me, fiction books or anything like that. And then I got recommended. I know we've mutually talked about this, which is Dan Kennedy. I got passed one of his audio CDs, and that sort of got me into reading and learning and being able to listen to something in the car. As I said, I'm not a big fan on the reading, but the audio stuff's fantastic. And all of a sudden, ever since I started sort of like utilising that sort of time and actually studying and learning and seeing what other people had done and how they'd implemented it, it was incredible how quick things started to turn around for me in my business, and a different way of thinking about things. And you start seeing stuff in a different light and thinking, if I could perhaps apply this way, that would have been a better way of doing it. And all of a sudden you could see all the mistakes that you made and you're going, I can't believe I've done it like that. That was such a stupid way of doing it, when you could see sort of like 1,000 other people had already failed doing it that way, but just hadn't taken the time to perhaps sort of like look and research and see what the better ways were, or more effective ways were.
Absolutely, and it's another great online marketer, Evan Pagan, who says teach what you learn, and it's so much easier, to watch something, study something, read something, and then be able to go to your own client audience and say, hey, listen, there's this new, and that only comes from studying.
It does, and I think I guess on the back of that as well, probably the flip side is not only studying but actually making sure that you're taking action on what you're learning. I went through a stage. I was as one of my goals one year. I was trying to read a book a week. I really got into it, and I was like, right, I'm going to listen to an audio book or read a book a week. And it slowly became okay. I was taking all this information in, but I wasn't actually doing anything. And sort of like by slowing that process down and actually implementing stuff that you sort of like hear on webinars and calls like this, and actually getting bits and pieces done, that things started to happen a lot faster rather than just sort of absorbing it. And again, one of the legendary copywriters who sits right in there with Mr. Kennedy, Halbert, is John Carlton, and what he said, he changed it totally for me in two levels. Number one is I'm sitting looking at my little thesaurus that I had in school and in college. I've got it right here because he said, keep that thesaurus near you, so when you're writing, just change a few words. But the second thing he said too was, like what you said, don't beat yourself up if you're not reading your books, all the way through. And he says sometimes you might go to page, 74, and there just might be one paragraph of something you could take and implement then and there, and that's good enough sometimes. Yeah, I'd agree. I've been to seminars before where people have paid sort of like thousands of pounds for tickets, and they'd be walking out at lunchtime because they got so much information in the sort of like the first morning that they just can't wait to get out and start implementing what they've learned. They've already got the value, already got the money. So sort of like rather than wasting the second half of the day sat there listening, then
they just say, hey, I'm out of here. That's it.
Start implementing some stuff in the business.
Fantastic. Well, Charlie, this has been absolutely terrific, and it happens very, very rarely that I come across somebody, and by the way, as a direct response guy, you'll want to know, I believe I picked up, I clicked on one of your ads on Facebook. I think that's where I first sort of saw, I was on there, saw your ad, clicked it on, went through that. You sent me a terrific book, which I hope you'll talk about to everybody in a moment, and but what I'm saying is that it happens very rarely that I sort of come across somebody and start sort of becoming a real follower and studier of what they do, a student of what they do rather. But you're one of them in a very short period of time. So on a personal level, I'd really like to thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
So where can people find you, and what are you doing? I mean, what are you up to? What are your plans for the year? What are you creating that others might be of interest? Let us know how we can find you and learn more.
Yeah, probably the best thing I'd say, or the starting point for everyone, is probably to go and get the book that you mentioned there, Mitch, and that's if they go to charliehutton.co.uk, Charlie with an IE, so it's CharlieHutton.co.uk. simply put your name and email address in there. You'll be able to download the sort of like the free PDF book. There's an option as well for a hard copy and an audio copy if you want to get that as well. And as you'll notice, ties in beautifully to what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, no, but
practice exactly what I preach.
You got to live the message, you know.
That's it.
So that's fantastic. So that is www.charlie, and that's LIE, Charlie,
LIE,
yeah,
right.
Hutton.co.uk. Name and email in there, and you'll be able to sort of get the same quality information, A, that we've talked about, and B, what I have had the good fortune of receiving, reading, and learning from myself.
That's it, and yeah, that's it. I mean, that's a cracking starter to get you going, and then we're looking at popping out some few webinars throughout the year as well, educating on some different bits and pieces. And I think the main thing really is just everything that I'm learning on the journey as everything grows at this end, is to make sure that we can pass on to everyone else out there as well, so that everyone can learn and hopefully succeed and have a fantastic 2013. So, as I said, that's the best way to get me. I'm also on Twitter at Hutchinson Web. And if you head to hutchinsonwebdesign.com as well, there's a blog on there which gets updated regularly if you're interested on a bit more of the techie side of things.
Fantastic. I'll put all those links and leads on the page here, so everybody will be able to find you. And make sure that you when you do contact Charlie, you let him know that you heard him on Ask the Experts, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Anything that, just mention your guys' name each, and that'll be fantastic. We can
fantastic.
Look after everyone that comes through. So,
well, Charlie, this has been a real pleasure. Thanks ever so much for this. What I'd really like to do is probably get you back on the show later on in the year. What I actually do, I start around November time and go through to the sort of end of Jan, start of Feb, and then the whole idea is allowing people to then get all the information and apply it and implement it into their business, if you like, you know. So the idea will be to very much get you back on later on in the year if you'd like to come on board.
yeah, sounds fantastic. I'd love to do that. Sounds brilliant.
Okay, fantastic. So, Charlie, thanks again for joining us, and thanks to everybody for sitting in to listen to Ask the Experts. And you now have all the information you need to become, like Charlie, an online lead gen rock star. So, thanks again, Charlie.
No, thanks, Vijay. Have a cracking rest of the day.
Thanks a lot. Cheers now.